Don't be suspicious. 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 Don't be suspicious.
How about we make something cool? Let's take a look at our Mimic scroll dice bag. Go ahead and get your pattern printed out. Do it at actual size. It'll accommodate for letter or for A4 paper. This was printed on A4, and if you notice, it's just got a little extra on the margins. Not a problem, that's why we have our cut lines. If you check out the key, it'll tell you what all the samples mean inside the pattern. Gives you a sizing guide to make sure it did print at the right size. For the most part, you can scale it up or down. The only difference is going to be your hole spacing. This is set up at 6mm holes. So if you happen to have a multi-punch, something like this, if it's at 6mm, it'll make your life a whole lot easier. Let's take a look at some of the stuff you're going to want to use. We're going to need a pair of scissors for cutting paper, and you're going to need some tape for taping that paper back together after you cut it. We're going to want some masking tape for taping that pattern down to the leather once we have it all done. You're going to want something to cut the leather. Shears, box cutter, razor, whatever you want, as long as they're sharp. We're going to need something for poking holes in the paper and the leather. These are my Cinnebox. I absolutely love these. Can't speak highly enough about the quality of the tool. These are set up at 6mm spacings, 5, 2, or 1. Very, very handy. Gonna need a zipper. This is the 7-inch one. We can also do a 5-inch, but this is going to be the 7-inch pattern that we're putting together now. They go together pretty much identically. Want something to whack your stuff to poke holes. We're going to need some stuff to sew. Waxed thread, lighter to burn your ends, and 2 needles. We're going to need some rivets. We're going to need 4 complete sets and 1 more set that actually doubles up on the same type. We'll get to that when we put everything together. The pattern's actually labeled with parts A and B. That's in reference to this part of the snap. So the cup or the insert, as I usually think of them, doesn't matter which one you use. I normally think of the cup as A and this as B, but it works perfectly fine if you do it the other way around, as long as you keep them consistent throughout the pattern. We'll want something to set those rivets. Optionally, you may want some contact cement. There's a few different spots, especially for the eyes, that I do recommend using the contact cement. Doesn't hurt to glue down the liner as well to make sure it stays flat. If you're rolling the dice on it, it just helps from getting any valleys or peaks. So I do highly recommend it. These are going to be optional for cutting stuff out. A round over bit and a punch, and then a line punch for getting in some smaller areas. You can do all of this with scissors or a knife. This just makes it easier. And then the last thing you're going to need is a pair of glass eyes. The pattern is set for 25mm. These are 30. We're going to slightly bigger. I'll show you how to adapt that, so if you want to go even bigger or smaller, you can. Let's pick out some leather. All right, for the main body, you're going to want something that's got a little bit of body to it, that it won't just fall over on its own. You should be able to hold it and it'll stay up. It won't just flop. It doesn't have to be super thick. You can use oil tans. They work great. The thicker it is, the harder it will be to roll. So something kind of in the middle is really what you're looking for the body. So we're going to go ahead and use this nice scaled pattern I've got here. I think that's going to make for a pretty cool squirrel. For the end pieces, I've got a real nice shiny suede. The only problem with this is what I'm talking about, where it doesn't stand up on its own. It just wants to fall. So because of that, you can use it the way it is. It'll just have a tendency to collapse. I'm going to go ahead and line this. Again, we'll use some of our contact cement, and I'll just use some scrap and make some circles that go just inside the stitching holes, and we'll glue that together to give it just a little more body and frame. We'll want something to line the bottom of the tray. I'm just going to use kind of this nice soft darker brown suede. That'll work perfect. It's just going to get glued down and stitched to the bottom. We need something for the tongue, and so I'm just going to use a red suede as well. Both of them pretty much have the exact same feel, but we'll just go with the color so it stands out. And then for the teeth, I've got some white here. This is actually deer hide. It doesn't really matter what you use. You can use veg tan, whatever. Mix it up, have some fun. The main thing for the pattern to work is the body should have a little bit of body, and the ends can either be floppy if you want it to be a little more squishy, or give them a little bit of a substance so that they don't just fall right apart. Now here we're going to stop for a second, and I've cut out 2 of these circles out of some scrap oil tan, just little extra body, still very pliable, but it's going to help hold up these ends. And so what we want to do is we actually just want to glue them right in the center of these stitch lines. It works better if you keep it inside the stitch lines so that when you sew them in, the stitch lines still have a chance to fold into the seam. So we're just going to go ahead and put those in before we cut these out and punch the snap into it as well. So this barge is very good contact cement. It will create a very strong hold, and then on top of that, that snap going all the way through will hold these in place without needing to stitch them in. We'll let both of those dry before we stick it together, and then we'll Now on your copy of the pattern, these dots won't be here. This is a leftover from an old pattern version that I was working on. So you don't have to worry about that. You'll only see on yours this top line, which is where the teeth are going to get sewn in. So I am just going to punch just that top line across each of these 3 folds. Next, we're going to want to go ahead and punch for our snaps. If you notice on the pattern, you'll have your marking for B, A. That'll let you know which side that you need to do, and I kept that out of the center so that after you punch it, you can still tell what needs to go there. So good to have this on hand after you get everything cut out, set it to the side, just keep it on hand so that you can reference it. You can also look at the overlay pattern at the on the last page of the print, and it'll have those too, just in a much smaller version. Okay, now for the zipper, I like to use a round punch. This happens to be a 3/8, and I can get that right at the end of that zipper line, and we can punch through. And now I can come back with a straight edge, and we can clean that up. Zipper is cut out. Now for these curves here, that's where I like to use corner punch. And the last thing was the straight punch that I mentioned earlier. It's really great for getting in just those little tight spots. You can get a razor blade in there. It's just a little easier, for me anyway, to punch that, and then I can cut the straight lines out. So now that piece is cut, you can come in with your razor and just cut straight out. Right, these are mostly dry now, so all we want to do is just go ahead and take that and again place that in the center. Make sure that we're not covering up any stitch holes. Just a little bit. And let's see here. Never can find the tool you're looking for. This guy isn't it, but he'll work. Now that we've got that done, let's go ahead and get that hole punched in the center. Get these cut out, and then we can set the rivets along with everything else. If your cut isn't 100%, where's my camera? If it's not a total circle, it's not a big deal. As you sew that in, it's going to pull the edges in and it'll look just right. So you're good. All right, we're going to go ahead and set all of our rivets now. On these end pieces, I like to use the part of the rivet that's not the finished dome, since this is going to be on the inside and you won't see it. So we're going to pop that through. And this is my A marking, so for me, I'm going to make that the cut piece. That's going to help set those two pieces of leather together. We're not going to have to worry about that coming apart. So this guy, for the pieces that are just underneath here where the zipper are going to go, we're going to set the B piece. Okay, on these tabs, we want to use the finished dome since it is going to be on the outside of the pattern. We want it to look nice. And again, these are going to be our B pieces. So that guy right there. Flip our setter over. Inside there. Same thing on this side. All right, 1, 2. Okay. Going to come down to this end. And again, this is facing the outside. So we're going to get that piece in. And these are also the B's, which, whoops, I need to grab 2 more of. Okay, and the last 2 that we have are slightly different. We're going to take, again, the flat piece, and we're going to go in from the unfinished side and have it come out here. So like these guys all had the dome on this side. Now the working piece is going to be on this side. And so that's going to be that cup again. Okay, and so now we can take these guys and snap them together to make our tray. So this will end up coming over. These will get buttoned in. And that'll work for our end pieces. Okay, now one thing I did not do earlier on the pattern, we've got these 2 marks here. These are where our eyes are going to go. So you want to make your mark or your cut as large as your eye is. These lines are set at 25 millimeters. I actually wanted to use a slightly larger eye here. So what I'm going to do, and this is what you can do for any size you want, is just kind of mark around. Set the guy in, mark around, and then we're going to want our line to go all the way through it. You can adjust the angles that way, however you want, but that's what we're looking at. So now I'm just going to take my razor. These are not something that have to be perfect in a certain spot. They don't have to be even. Being slightly lopsided gives it a little bit more of a unique effect. There we go. So now we've got those cuts there. All right, so now we want to place our zipper in. In order to help set the zipper, I like using a little double-sided tape. We'll put that down and then be able to stick this to it, and then that way we can sew through and it's not going to move on us. While we sew, we're going to end up sewing just the first part of this zipper right here, or of this liner right here. It's going to go in right behind the zipper on the backhand side, and if you notice, it lines up really nice with everything else. Those two dots that I made earlier are where our eyes are going to go. You don't have to have those markings. I just like to keep it as a reference. But basically what we're going to do, we're going to go through, we're going to sew down the zipper with this piece like this. Once we're done, we'll flip it open. We're going to coat everything with glue and then set our eyes in place. And so what I'll want to do is, after it's kind of set there, is get the eye in place and then really push this down, lining up our stitching holes so they're still good to go. But that is going to hold those eyes in place while we can come back and flip and mold our eyelid back in place around it. So let's get our zipper put in place. As much as we can, we want to keep that to the outside of the zipper line. There we go. So then, just got to get this paper. Flip that guy back over. Okay. Get that all down. And we'll get that stitched. Along with that stitch, like I said, as we come through this back piece, we'll want to stitch that on. Okay, so we start our zipper stitch, and we're going to go until we get to the point where we are on the flat stretch, and that's where this guy is going to come in. So this is actually the first hole right here that I need to go through. This piece is going to need to sit at the very end of this stretch. We don't want to cover the zipper. So this guy here is actually going to come up through this first hole. And it's going to be a little floppy and loose at first, but as you get across the stitch, it'll end up falling in place. And this guy, well, is not going to go through that hole. We're going to go through behind down here so that we get a good clean stitch. And now we've got our first hole started. So that's going to, sorry, let me get that better. It's going to come through. And so we're going to continue this stitch all the way down through this piece. It's just going to go down through here, down the zipper, and then we'll continue around the zipper and get back to this afterwards. So I'll cut back to you guys once I get done with the zipper, and we'll go from there. Okay, so we get to the end of our stitch, and we're going to back stitch a couple times. So just kind of loop it back over. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and snip this, and then melt our wax thread down, and that'll hold. So now we've got our zipper in place, it's sewn, and we've got our flap. At this point, we need to stop with this. Before we can continue on, we need to take care of our lining, and the reason for that is this stitch line right here. So once we start stitching in our roll to bring this over, we're going to have to be able to stitch that down, so this needs to all be in place so that we can get that. We should also just go ahead and get our teeth while we're at it, so we'll get those and the bottom done, then we'll come back, do our eyes, and stitch in our sides and go from there. Okay, next thing we're going to do is sew the tongue to the tray liner. We want to do that before we actually put it in because the tongue holes do not go all the way through the liner. You don't want it to show on the back side. So we'll do that. We'll get it sewn on the outer edge, glue down, we'll get some other sewing done. So bit by bit. First part's zipper, next part's tongue. Go ahead and get started here. Again, just a saddle stitch, everything in this is, so nothing too terribly complicated if you just stick with it. Saddle stitches are technically easy in theory, but getting them good and clean and to where every stitch looks nice takes a lot of hard work. Even more so when you're trying to do it on camera. I'm going to go ahead and finish this stitch up, and I'll catch you guys as soon as I get done. Okay, as we get back to our last stitch here, this is where we are going to want to stop. We do not want to stitch across the top yet. We'll do that when we actually finish stitching the body case together. So we'll just back stitch this one here. Now, at this point, we want to go ahead and do the tongue divider. However, there's something we can do if we want to, and I'm going to this time. Normally, you want to try to keep a dice tray nice and flat. However, this is a mimic. We should have a little fun with it. We're going to stuff the tongue. So we'll take just a little bit of fluff, what you would use in a teddy bear stuffed animal. It does not take much. As you push it in, right now, especially with this being suede, the top and the bottom are going to bulge out, but we're going to end up sewing that bottom flat, which will just force the top up a little higher, so don't overstuff it, or you won't be able to get the bottom flat. And again, we just want something to add just a little bit of character to it. There we go. So we'll take one of these cutoffs. And we'll stitch just that divider. Again, we don't want to do the top yet. Right, I'm actually going to take just a tiny bit more and see if I can't get it stuffed on the side. All right, there we go. Now we got that puffed up a bit. Okay, so that's going to end up going there, but what we want to do is we're going to go ahead and stitch this line right now, and this one only. That way we can put down some glue and roll this guy down to keep him nice and flat. I'll go ahead and get this line stitched and see you as soon as I'm done. Okay, so now we've got this line stitched, which is going to allow this to kind of flop back and forth, which is what we want for now. So we're going to take our barge, and especially in the middle is where I really want to get this glued. I like to leave just a little bit of area around the stitch lines to make sure I can get them lined up correctly, for one. And then for two, you don't need it as much right there because the stitch is going to hold it down. The texture on this leather sure does make this interesting. we're gonna let that dry. Okay, I think we're good to go ahead and set this down now. Now, when I like to line up stitching holes, I've got some tiny little nails here that I like to use where I can go in and set that like that. And so I've just got each of these in a corner now, and that will allow me to come in. At first, I just want to be gentle and make sure those line up. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I've got some stretch. But really this back section here is what I want to try to make sure I have flat. All right, now I can stitch these lines and I can get my teeth stitched on, and we'll be getting close to wrapping this up. Okay, so now we got our two edges stitched. We're looking good there. Now we need to do teeth. So the teeth have two sets of sides and two sets of fronts, or one set of fronts, excuse me. Everything's going to evenly space. And so if you start in the corner, once you run out of stitching holes, skip 3, then start again, skip 3, and then start again, and everything will fit nicely. All right, so let's start on this end. I'm gonna grab this guy here. And we're gonna start off with the tooth immediately. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 holes stitched. Now we're going to do our next 3 with no tooth. 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to grab our next tooth. Okay, 3 for that tooth. We're going to skip another 3. Or stitch another 3. We're not really skipping anything. 1. 2. And 3. So we've got the first line, 3, the tooth, 3, the next tooth, we have 1, 2, 3, and then we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to the end. There we go. And that last tooth will cover that rivet hole. So now we're going to do the same thing on this side, and then we'll do the front teeth. The front teeth are the exact same pattern as far as teeth, skip 3, tooth, skip 3, tooth. The only difference is when you're doing the front, we have an extra tooth. So that's the sides, and then our front, when we go to lay them out, we'll have tooth, little fang, center fangs, fang and tooth. And again, stitch, 3 between, stitch, 3 between, stitch, 3 between, stitch, 3 between, stitch. All right, let's go ahead and get those done. Okay, so we have all of our teeth stitched in now. So what we're going to do now is focus on the eyes. After we get the eyes, we will then stitch in our side pieces, and we're pretty much done. So we've got our slits here. That's where our eyes are going to shine through. We want to coat this all with our contact cement. And then what we're going to do is we're going to peel this back upon itself to make our opening, and that's going to give it kind of like a eyelid effect. We'll get our eyes placed. We'll get some down on here. I want to do everything on this side first before I even put the contact down on this side. We don't want it getting stuck before we're ready. Then we'll coat this and kind of seal it. So let's go ahead and we really need it around that eye, but ultimately we're going to seal this whole piece to just hold that in. So let's go ahead and we're going to let that sit until it gets nice and tacky to where it'll stick on itself, and we'll be right back. All right, brought in my lovely silicone mat here. I'm going to be flipping this over to where glue is going to be touching the desk, and I really don't want to get cement down on that I could then get on a piece of leather later, which is what this guy's for. So what we're going to do, we're going to flip this over. We're going to keep this panel out of the way. We're going to keep it folded back for now. Actually, do I have... Let's take and clip that back so that it doesn't fall forward. Okay, so we're going to roll this forward and situate that right on top of our eye. Now I've got this guy here. It's a little modeling spoon. You would use it for like clay modeling. I find it works really well when you're trying to help finesse leather in some shapes. So again, I'm folding this back underneath. Let me see if I can zoom in here for you guys. Okay, so we're going to fold this leather back over in on itself, and we can use that modeling spoon to help move it. And then we're going to do the same thing with this top. Then we're going to get our eye in place. And so I folded that a little too much. See if we can bring that back a little bit. Okay. I may have opened that up slightly too much. Let's get our other eye over here. Let me see what I'm doing. that one is shaping up really nice. The other one I opened up a little bit, and I think I might have gotten it too much, but that's okay. That's why we secure it. Okay, so line that eye in there just how we want it. Okay, now what we're going to do is take more of our cement. Let's get the back of those guys. Didn't mean to hop that out. And we're going to get these. Okay, again, we're going to let that dry. Once it's dry, we'll be back, close it over, we can start stitching. Okay, so we're just folding this over now. And we're going to go ahead and press in around it. We want to kind of block that up behind that piece. These are all going to get stitched as part of the same roll that closes this up. So we really have the side stitch here, the side stitch here, and the bottom, and that's the last of our stitching. Okay, we're going to take that, flip it over, and take a look here. So this eye looks great now. We ended up getting him pretty much spot on. We're going to just finesse around and get that to the point. You want to push that down and get that glue to close in any of the areas around there. This guy over here, we need to open back up. He kind of got folded back under. We'll just use that modeling spoon, bring that over. That over, okay. And then the same thing here, really push around that eye. Okay. So now we are going to stitch our end on. So on this, the finished side is going to go against the unfinished side of this one. We want to start at the hole right to the bag side of the bottom stitch line. And we'll end up back stitching one stitch there. I'll show you that when we get to the end. But we're going to go in like that. Doesn't matter where you started on the circle, it's all the same. And get our stitch. And so we are just going to work around bit by bit. At first it's very easy as you go through here. As you get further along the circle and you're starting to pull the rest of this bag along, it'll start getting a little more difficult to stitch. And same thing with the other side when you get going, since it's already kind of formed a little bit. The hardest part of this entire bag is coming up here in a second, and that is this bottom stitch. And that's purely because we're gonna have to stitch through the bag. We'll open up the zipper in order to be able to get down inside. The middle portion really isn't that bad. It's the end here and here where you're not in the complete opening of the zipper. That's a little difficult. Takes just a little bit of time. Stick with it, you'll have it no problem. It's well worth it to get it all done in the end. So I'm going to keep doing this, and as I get towards the end, I'll kick back with you guys and show you how to transition over into the flat stitch. Okay, as we make it around to this portion of the circle where we're getting into this back lining, just make sure as you come through, as we come through there, we want to grab both the lining and the outside. And that way we can seal that off really well. And then as you stitch back through, make sure you go through the lining and then the end piece. And so you'll be going through the 3 pieces of leather from here until we get to the end, where you'll actually be going through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as you loop back around. Okay, so we're getting to our last 2 stitches here, and it seems kind of weird to me always that this is going to come together, but it does, trust me. So next stitch is going to be completely normal. I'll go ahead and go through that hole. And we're going to come back up through here. Keep pulling that tight as we go. Okay, so now this time, this outside guy is going to go through. We're going to go through that last hole in the circle. And so now all the holes in the circle are filled, but what we're actually going to do is come back out this hole and out the bottom over here. So if you can see, there's 1 stitch missing right here, and we're going to fill that back in, and that's how we're going to get back on track. And then this guy is going to come just like you would expect him to through here, and then we're going to be in that hole right there. Now I like to stitch about 6-8 holes down on here to really kind of lock this in before I move to the other side, since this is still kind of open. Until you really get some of those stitches down, that'll lock that part in. So while it's in this state, sometimes it's easier to kind of fold it back and push it in, but don't forget you can unzip and come inside here and grab this. Now this one, we're going to do that back stitch. We're going to come up through that corner piece. Up through here. And then down and out. And now we are completely back to a normal saddle stitch. Out that hole and the same on the other side. And so again, we're just going to go ahead and do about another 6-7 holes. Because if you can see, that keeps pulling that stitch apart, and it will until we get more of it sewn in. So if I can, I like to do this while I can. And I've just found the results work out a little better. Okay, now I know a lot of people will tell you that you never have to tie a knot, that you should be able to trim it and burn it off and it should keep great. And I normally believe that's true. I have found, however, that with this particular stitch, it is best to tie a knot, as you're still twisting and turning and pulling so much throughout here that I've had that stitch come undone on me before. It's inside the bottom of the bag. You're never going to see it. And I find that that knot will help you a whole lot more than it'll do anything against you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get this other guy going on the other side, and I'll catch back up with you as we're stitching across the bottom. Okay, we are again on the final stitch of the circle, so I'll show you one more time how to do that transition. So from your outside thread, we're going to go back in through that last hole. Watch our inside thread, we don't want to pierce it. And then we're going to skip to the next hole in line, come out and down. And then we can come up and through that stitch. Our inside thread is the easy one. That's the one that just goes through and out. Helps if I can see which one I'm working on. Through you. Through you. And then out that corner. Okay, now it is our straight line across the bottom. Okay. Again, the end pieces here are more difficult than the center will be. Oh, shoot. All right, got that tangled. So we're going to undo that. Hold on, what do I have going on here? Okay. There we go. While you're able to come out through the bottom of the bag here or through the top, it is real easy to get your thread tangled or mixed. So just stop at each thread and stitch and make sure that everything looks right before moving on to the next one, so you don't get too tangled up and have to go back and redo a lot. All right, I'm going to keep working this and I'll jump back with you guys when we get close to done here. So right about the time that we hit the tongue, at least coming from this side, you should notice it's starting to get easier for two reasons. One, we can actually start to see inside the bag where our stitch is. So that makes it a whole lot easier to line everything up. But also, the further we get down that line, the more it pulls everything into place, and it gets really easy to get the needle through just because it's in alignment with where it's supposed to be. So like that went through real easy, and then I can see right where that guy needs to go. And so this will now continue through pretty easily all the way down until we run into that other stitch, which we pulled over a little bit. And so that's going to be in a good spot still to tie off another knot. and go ahead and burn that off. All right, we have finished our final stitch and we are done. Last few things to do are cleanup. So with the suede, I have a little suede brush that I like to use. Gets off all the little punch dots, any fuzz from other leather, anything like that. I work with suede quite often though, which is why I have one. So that really cleans that up. Then let's give this a test and make sure that everything works right. So we'll punch up the side, this side over. All right, and that is our mimic. So if we want to roll him up, let's pop, pop. Sides fold in. And we roll up until these guys meet up. Sometimes these snaps need a little bit of work, which is why you should always test them. So that one works. All right, so what you can do in a case like this, give it a whack. That gets it to snap the first time. Now, let's do that again. And now it snaps. Looks like we might need to do the same thing on this one. There we go. And then once these fold over, they pop right in the end. And looks just like regular, ordinary dice bag. So we've got this guy, which is our regular one. How are they going to know? Nobody's going to know. Time to eat some dice. Thanks for building. I appreciate you guys checking out the channel, buying the pattern. I appreciate it. If you've got ideas for new cool stuff, let me know. I'm happy to work on patterns with you. I've got some a lot of new dice bags coming out that I've already done that I just have to work up the patterns for to get them in a position where they're ready to be downloaded. Some D20s, some D20 mimics, some journals, wallets, all that sort of stuff. So let me know what the type of stuff is that you're wanting to see, and I'll make sure that's the stuff that gets up first. Thanks again, and hope you make something cool. Let me see what you do. Thanks.